Okay, Jeremy, we're live. Thanks for joining me all the way from Switzerland, right? So I'll turn
Exactly.
it over to you to start us off. And I know you have a pinned tweet on your profile. I'm curious, maybe you could start off with your story and how you got to where you are today. And one thing I just want to call out, I mentioned, and you call it out in your tweet, in your story about how, you've had a good upbringing, good parents, you were a college athlete, um, went and got your MBA. And so I think, right, you've had a story, but it's not that, started from nothing and now I'm doing amazing. You've had a good life. And I don't know if that changes anything or if you've had any differences building your personal brand because of that, or if it hasn't made a difference. But if you can just kind of go into that and, how you got to where you are today, that'd be great.
Of course. So obviously, as you said, my name's Jeremy. I'm from Switzerland. I run a marketing agency, so we focus on coaches, consultants, like the whole info product space, and they make money online niche. We kind of help them grow and monetize their personal brand on Instagram, and that's really sort of the platform that we specialize in. We've done a bit around 71 million in sales in the past 3 years. Grown 3 to 4 million followers, give or take, and been lucky to work with some of the bigger guys. But yeah, as you've said, like for me, I had this really untraditional entrepreneurial path where my dad was a business owner. He came from like nothing, built something up really well. My mom is a children's psychologist. Like she had like a six-figure salary. So naturally, I was brought up pretty well. I was pretty fortunate in the situation I was in, where I was, kind of finding myself in the upper middle class. And then obviously from a young age, I was taught that, hey, we're gonna go high school, right? Get good grades. Sorry, actually go elementary school, get good grades, apply for high school. We have a bit of a different system. So I went through high school, which was somewhat like prestigious. And then, you go to university and that's kind of the path you take. Then you go corporate, right? But for me, it was more like, oh, I fell in love with sports. I was pretty good at football or soccer, as they say in America, right? And then later on, I switched my full focus to tennis. And so I had that, like, I want to be an athlete, like sort of mindset. And then obviously at one point I realized there is a big risk in terms of, if you don't make it, you waste like 100 grand a year. And I'm not sure how many people can afford that or how many parents can afford that to pay for years, right? And then in came the opportunity of college tennis, where you get a stipend, you basically, get free degree at decent universities, right? And so that was one thing that I was like, ooh, that's pretty interesting. Like, I actually want to go and do that. So, I was extremely blessed to go to America. Did that, played for Fresno State for 4 years. Bulldog born, Bulldog bred, I guess. Absolutely loved it there. And then from there, my last 2 years, I started to really get absorbed with like this whole American dream culture, right? And at that point, I was like, okay, like being this kind of thing is really cool and I love it, but I don't think I'm going to make it as a pro. It's like, what else can I do that makes me a ton of money? Because that's really what I kind of wanted. And then I started to look on all these side hustles and all that jazz. And, eventually started to come across ads from a guy selling agency courses, how to start a digital marketing agency. And that's really sort of for me how that all started. It wasn't really this, oh, I'm poor, my family's poor, or like I didn't have a dad in my life, and like none of that usual stuff. So for me, I find it really hard to like relate to like all these other entrepreneurs, because my story was more like I had a really good upbringing, but the one thing I was taught is like what we have is ours and it's not yours by, just inheritance. So like you have to sort of earn your own keep. And so I think that naturally really like put me into a position where I was like, I want to do well because I've seen what my dad's built for himself, and where he's come from. And I wanted to have that same effect so that, one day I could have pass on work ethic and all that stuff onto like my kids.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great story. And one piece I want to ask you about, if you had not gone to America, would you still think you would have developed that entrepreneurial spirit? Let's say you just stayed in Switzerland and went to university in Switzerland. Was that really a key, or was it always a part of you and you kind of knew you always wanted to do something like that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because everyone likes to like shit on America these days, right? Of like obviously we have the woke culture and like all that stuff, right? There's a lot of it that's probably going wrong, but like for me, I attribute a big part of like I don't want to really call it success, but like the stuff that we've been able to achieve because I went to America, because I was able to go into this environment where people are crazy about sports. They support it, right? It sort of like gave me a chance to delay the harsh truth, like you need to make money, right? Because I was able to go through college, have sort of like the cushy life in college, right? Really. And it also gave me the chance, like sort of pursue some passions, try out different things, and it gave me time. And I think that's most people don't have that, right? 18, 19, they got to go make these hard choices. Whereas, in Switzerland, they've really perfected sort of like the matrix system where it's like nobody starts a business, nobody takes any risks because they're all like, yeah, it's not worth it, it's too big of a risk. You know, they say all these things. And so it's kind of like, for me, it was kind of like, oh, I have this opportunity to do this, and this now, right? This is so amazing. And so, yeah, definitely going to America is massive because I wasn't here. People believe in stuff. So if I tell someone like, yeah, I want to be a billionaire, like half the people are going to be like, yeah, you can do it, man. Like, just possible for you. Whereas like in Switzerland, people are like, that's not possible. You need to get lucky for that, right? So I think definitely it's one thing that I've really, really took and like love about America is that mindset of like anyone can do anything, and you know where there's a will, there's a way. So those are really the two things that I think definitely contributed well for me going to America.
Did you have some preconceived notions before you came to college here, or what you would call university, like, or talking with your friends in Switzerland? They're like, "Oh, you're going to America. Why are you going to America?" Or I'm just
I think
curious.
honestly, everyone was really like happy because like going to America is like, you know, going over the pond is sort of like you've made it, right? You're like the guy if you can go to like America and study there. Because at the time, like going like, you know, college athletics in Switzerland wasn't as big. So people were really like, this is so cool. This is an amazing opportunity. Yeah, I have the preconceived notion that like Americans are pretty ignorant, you know, everyone's pretty like superficial and stuff, which for a large part is true, or I found to like somewhat be true at times. But I think there's also so much to it that people don't see that I was thought was so positive, you know, in terms of when I decided to start my business, you know, a lot of people around me in America, they were supporting. They were like, this is amazing. I want to support. Like, how can I help? You got this. Whereas in Switzerland, it's more just like, dude, like apply for an internship, get a job, right? Just all that stuff, which I just personally felt that's a huge difference maker. Because I'm that guy now with my friends or like the people around me where I'm like, yo, let me put you up on game. Like, let me go and help you out now. Like, let me, like, it is possible. It is possible. Whereas at home, people are told, no, safety, do this thing. Don't try any risk because it'll just come down and haunt you. So I think that's really something that I've learned and adapted. That's, you know, I don't think people are really aware of.
Yeah, no, I find it super interesting, and I've been to Europe, but I've never lived in Europe. So, but I think there is that sense of like safety, get a good job, pensions, free healthcare, go, long vacations in Europe, and not so much in the US. So maybe one more question on this, and then we can pivot to something else. What was your biggest culture shock when you came to America and lived in Fresno, right? Because I've been to Fresno. I mean, was it the food, whatever it was, the
Honestly, it was two things. It was the food. I wasn't so shocked 'cause I love a good fast food restaurant, right? So like for me, it wasn't a big of a shock. And honestly, I think that's actually a misconception. I think the food in America is amazing. I mean, you know, Fresno particularly, I've had some of the best freaking tacos you can have. We had really good
Mhm,
restaurants in Fresno too. So like, you
mhm.
know, I wasn't shocked by that. I was just more shocked by like how fucking crazy people are. Like I just remembered the first time I came to Fresno, it was like kind of like I think the first time I actually arrived to it, you know, I arrived and like I took a Greyhound bus. And in Switzerland, it's really safe. It's really good to take. I got on the Greyhound. There's some guy doing something illegal in the back. And, you know, I was just like, what the fuck? Some guys with like teardrops. And so like one quick like Google search showed me that like, oh shit, like a teardrop is nothing good, right? And so, long and behold, I get down to Fresno, and you know, within 5 minutes, I get out. It's like downtown Fresno, which is not the best place. And you know, I literally 400 or 500 meters away from us, there's like a drive-by shooting. What? Like, I literally get out of the car. My coach sees me, he's like, "Oh, hey, man!" And then you just hear like gunshots, and you're like, "What the fuck?" And then your coach pushes you back into the van, and then like people driving off. And I was just sitting there, I was like, yeah, I ain't telling mom about that. Like my mom's never going to hear about that, right? She'll only know if she'll watch this podcast. So I think that was my biggest culture shock when like you see some of the crazies is true. I think that was something. The second thing was like how crazy people are about sports. Like I fucking loved it. Like when we would
Mhm.
travel or like we would go place, they're like, "Oh, you playing for Fresno State? Like, yeah, go Dogs!" And like it is super rallied up, and like it'd be like this cool thing where like you're like part of like this huge, large extended family, and it's like you have this massive status, you know, whether it's in school, whether it's in social environments, like even to the point where it's like kind of like on a dating or other people's perspective, right? It really helps to kind of be associated with the university in that sense. And that's one thing, honestly, I loved because I always in Switzerland, it's almost like you're considered lesser when you're big into sports because they're like, oh, you're like not realistic, you're not focused on your career. So yeah, that I think those are the two biggest culture shocks. that's obviously besides the language. Like I thought Switzerland is fairly good with in terms of like we learn English, like we do all that stuff, but people were just freaking talking like machine guns, and I'd be like, "Could you slow that down for me a second?" Like, I'm feeling pretty stupid right
Yeah,
now, and at the time my accent was a lot thicker. I wasn't as confident speaking, and so people just go so fast, and like they just don't skip a beat.
true. No, I'll just tell you. I don't know if you know this, but I've had some experiences on the Greyhound as well. But what happens when people get out of prison? They give them Greyhound tickets in the United States to get home, and so I think that was part of your experience because I've ridden the Greyhound a couple times when I was in college to go home, and I had a similar experiences. Just to let you know. So yeah, not a lot of good public transport in the United States, but hey, it's all good. Um, and I know this is kind of off topic, but I've been to Switzerland as well. So I just want to say I loved my time in Switzerland when I was 18. I spent some time in Lucerne. So
Oh, lovely,
beautiful,
lovely.
beautiful, amazing place. I love Switzerland. So to pivot, I'm curious why it sounds like you saw that ad for an agency course. Was it just kind of dumb luck and you just said, huh, this is interesting and ran with it? And then why did you stick with Instagram and why do you continue to stick with Instagram as your core platform to help people grow?
The way I perceive these things is like anything can work, right? You can grow an audience on Instagram, you can build an audience on LinkedIn, Twitter, right? Just as with business, you can build a social media marketing agency, you can build a sales company, you can build like an Amazon FBA brand, right? I think the point being is just it comes down to how long you're going to do it. So, for example, I started the SMMA, I saw it, and I was like, it looks really juicy because, you know, people make a lot of money. There's these 19-year-olds who like are wearing nice watches. They're like dating like hot chicks and all that stuff, right? It's like, ooh, looks like pretty good life, right? I want that. That's the type of life I want. And looks really attainable because it's online, right? So I can do it after practice, before I do my schoolwork, I can do some work on the business. So I thought that was really lucrative. Now, the big thing is I had a lot of people that at the same time were looking into side hustles themselves, but the difference was my first year in business, or like when I started looking into these things, I failed horribly. I probably lost like 5 grand in the first year, like probably like 8 grand the second year for really looking into it. And all the other people, they stopped. They were like, after 3 months, oh, it didn't work. Let me not do it anymore, right? Whereas for me, it was like, I saw the agency, and then at the same time, I saw these little Instagram theme pages. So it's like these pages like wealth, entrepreneurship quotes, like all these little pages. And I saw them sort of blowing up, and I was like, ooh, you can make money selling products through there. You can sell promotions, right? Like a lot of leverage there. So I started doing that, and I was like, if I can do this, I can turn this into a marketing agency, I guess, right? And so at the time I saw that, I was like, okay, cool, this makes complete sense. Within 6 8 months, I didn't make any money off of it, but I was like fascinated. And the thing is, for me, I was really obsessed about stuff. Like have a really obsessive personality, so I was like, I'm obsessed. I'm gonna figure this out. And when I suck at something, I really want to get good at it. Same with tennis, pretty bad at it, and then I ended up being somewhat decent at it. So I've really had that obsessive personality of like, I'm gonna figure this out. So long and behold, I think that was like 2019 when I got into it. Probably, yeah, like end of 2018, beginning 2019. So I graduated, basically was like, okay, cool. Well, I want to be a business owner. I knew at that point I want to be an entrepreneur, right? And I figured, okay, I'm not going to go all in on tennis. I'm not going to go all in on a job. I'm going to get a master's. So I got like a coaching offer to go coach at Santa Clara University and get my MBA paid for. So I did that. And in my every free time, I would just go and work on like business ideas. And so I just knew that this was possible because there are too many guys making money with this business model. And I was like, I know if I can figure this thing out that they do with Facebook ads and I can figure it out on Instagram, I know exactly I can make it even bigger. Right. And so, stuck with it over time with my business partner, and just sort of through that, I've found my own leverage, right? But it all stems from me sticking with it for like now almost 3.5 years, right? And not just jumping from opportunity to opportunity. Now, in terms of why I think Instagram's the best in 2024, it's super simple, right? YouTube is great for evergreen, but it's hard to get traction and it's really hard to like monetize unless you're really good, right? Twitter is okay, but I feel like really the growth depends on like Elon's mood when he wakes up in the morning and decides to like fire people or there's like whack platforms engagement. TikTok is amazing. You can really go viral, but there's no community feature. You can't network with people. You can't DM, right? And like a lot of the audience is not very educated, which means when I want to try and monetize, which is my goal, right? It's harder to sell expensive stuff. LinkedIn, it's honestly just for dorks at this point in my eyes. It's just like it's the worst platform out there. Like it's just like everyone's like, "Ooh, that's amazing what you're doing," and it's no like real conversation. And Instagram is everything. You can go viral with reels. You can actually build a community because you can share your story on this. Like you can share what you're doing on your stories, right? And then the ultimate killer is the DMs because you can connect with people or you can message people in the DMs. From a business perspective, you're in control. With YouTube, YouTube's in control of like who sees your stuff. With Twitter, a bit different, but you don't have stories, so you can't really build a deep connection. With LinkedIn, it's just LinkedIn, just everyone spams, so it's useless anyways. But with Instagram, you have the ability to attract millions of people. You have the ability to like show people what you're up to and really build that like cult-like connection. And lastly, you can actually convert because even if you don't get a lot of engagement, you can reach out to the people that like your stuff and you can strike a connection. So really that whole rounded picture of like why Instagram is my platform of choice. And will probably always be the number one sort of platform that I'm going to be using.
No, I think you articulated it really well. And to be honest, so for this podcast, I do have an Instagram account, but I don't really post on it. And so maybe you can convince me otherwise, right? Which is interesting. And I guess I'll just add, right? I messaged you on Twitter to get you onto this podcast. How does the DM feature on Instagram differ from Twitter? Do you just find that people are more willing and to respond and engaged in the DM feature of Instagram, or?
No, the biggest difference is you can have primary and secondary, or primary in general, right? So one, if I have like for example my private contacts, right, that I'm like those are my boys, like I just don't I want anyone to touch those. They're in primary, so like and then I can flip the tab, right, and go to like general. Whereas on Twitter, I need to scroll sometimes if I want to text one of my friends, right,
Mhm.
because he's hidden, and like it's just this thing, right, where Twitter is just not as organized. Whereas I really feel Instagram is actively pushing the whole creator platform stuff and creator tools. And so I think they're actively taking more initiative on helping creators make money and like use the account as a business vehicle instead of just like a social platform.
And then how about a comparison between TikTok and Instagram? I've noticed, so I totally agree, like from a community standpoint, right? If you get a follower on TikTok, they're not really coming back to your page to see what you're up to, or, they're just continuing to scroll. But I have noticed that TikTok with from an e-com or even an info products perspective, that you can pretty easily list products for sale on there. And I'm not sure if the same exists with Instagram, or how you
Doesn't
compare
yet.
those
I'm sure.
features.
I'm sure they will. They will. I think TikTok's amazing in terms of they've actually pushed Instagram to like reopen their algorithm and actually make cool stuff. So that's pretty good. But the issue with TikTok is like it's a really like it's a pull platform, I would say. It's like it just forces you to like view stuff. You just see the viral stuff, right? It's not like your feed's really curated where like if you engage with someone or you follow someone, you see their content every single day. Right. It's just a platform where like you discover new stuff. So as a creator, then if I'm on a platform where everything is just discover new, it's rather difficult for me because now someone's not just going to see me and buy, right? The reason people buy is because they've seen you somewhere, they decided to follow you, and now they've followed you for a while. They've consumed, 20, 30 pieces of content, which is like 30 touch points, right? So at this point, they're pretty nurtured. They're like, okay, I know who you are. I know what you're doing. I know what you're about. I'm now interested in buying from you. Whereas on TikTok, you're actually going to go and see, oh, I saw this guy's content, and maybe sometimes I see it again, right? It's less touch points, it's less like deep the connection because you don't see as much from the person. And so the likelihood of you actually making a purchase is 10 times lower, right? And so I think that's the power of Instagram. Because even then on Instagram, if I see that you like my stories, you vote on polls, I can message you and be like, hey, Connor, just started checking out the content. Like, just wanted to connect with some of the audience. Like, what are you up to these days? Like, what made you follow me? Bam, you give me some feedback. I'm like, oh, what you up to? And you're like, oh, I'm just like in the insurance space. I'm trying to like grow my sales team's performance. I'm like, dude, why not using Instagram? And you're like, oh, I just don't know how to use it. Okay, cool. Here's a free guide, Connor. Like, just let me know if there's some value in it.
Mhm.
And boom, you're now building so much goodwill with me where like, if I tell you, Connor, like, I'm actually going to come in and put my content system in your stuff. And I'm a guarantee that your sales team is going to close an extra 3 deals a month. So it's like out of nowhere, that conversation you're much more likely to buy. Whereas you see me do some dance trends on TikTok, right? And then out of a sudden I'm like, buy my shit. So
Hmm.
That's pretty much the biggest difference that I've seen.
Yeah, I'll say that TikTok, it seems like, oh, hey, it's this crappy drop shipped item. Like you don't even know who I am. You just ran across my video. Go ahead and buy it once, and I'll never hear from you again. Is that kind of the vibe you get from TikTok?
Yeah, I think the stuff is obviously it's just like that's a bit the prejudgmental stuff in terms of like, oh, TikTok's just like for like cheap stuff, right? But I 100% agree with you. The overarching user base of TikTok, and I'm generalizing this quite a bit, they're not ready to use TikTok as a vehicle to spend $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 in a product, right? They're easy to spend 10, 20, $50 yet, but it was the same on Instagram like a few years ago. But I think just as right now, TikTok's still too young. Like really everyone that I know in the creator space, they make their money promoting stuff on Instagram. So funneling traffic from TikTok into Instagram is really how they make their money.
Interesting. No, you've given me a new perspective on Instagram. I want to go back. You said something earlier that you're very obsessive in terms of, and I would assume you view that as a positive personality trait, but would you say that's something innate in you, or is that something you learned, your parents instilled in you? Because I think it is really important, right? Is like that you said, hey, I'm going to figure this out. I'm not going to give up, because you mentioned, hey, I worked for 8 months and I made no money and I didn't see a lot of progress, which can be pretty disheartening, right?
Yeah, so I think for me, it really started as a kid. And this is not just some like, oh, this is like trauma coming up. It's just like, I think an observation that I've made. Like when I was younger, for us, like football, like soccer was a huge thing. And so we always would select. And at first, I was always selected last. And I hated that feeling of like being selected as last player, sort of like you're the worst player, nobody wants you, but we just have to take you on the team, right? It's kind of like, I guess, little league football, like the one dude who can't catch a football, like you just vote him last. And so for me, I was like, I hate that because it just makes me feel bad. So I'm gonna go and become the best so I can pick the teams, right? And so then it just that's I think really where the first time it started, where I consciously would like spend every waking minute, dribbling, shooting, like working on my skills. And I think that's really kicked it off, I always had this thing when I'm really bad at something, it just really bothers me and I want to get better at it. The only place I didn't have it was school because I just thought it was like I just was like, let me just pass and get decent grades and then I'm fine. Right. But tennis was the same thing. I was really far behind on rankings. I wasn't naturally just picking stuff up. I wasn't talented, but I was like, okay, cool. Well, I'm not talented, but I'm gonna go and outwork any person out there, right? College, same thing. I really went to college and I was like, this is my time now. This is my one opportunity to really maximize my tennis because, I don't need to pay for every hour I'm on the court. I have actually access to decent players and school is so easy here that I can actually like, put my whole focus on tennis. And, for me, I was really there and I was like, all right, you guys wake up at 7, you're at the gym by 8 when we have our team session. So if you guys do that, if I wake up at 5, you know, I like do something, I like have a little morning routine, I get done with like 5:30, right? I go and like eat breakfast, 6 I leave the house, I stretch for 30 minutes, like warm up my body, and then 6:30 to 7:30 I work out for an hour, I take a 30-minute break, and then I join the team workout. I'm already an hour and ahead. And if you and I compete, then I can look in your eyes and be like, yep, when I was sweating and working my ass off, you were still sleeping. To me, it gave me like a mental edge where like, I was pretty extreme in college. So like I would go side change and I would tell my coach like, oh yeah, he didn't wake up at 5 a.m. He was sleeping at 7 a.m. And I would just like say these things because to me it was like this. I already outcompeted you before we even started competing because I was willing to do the work you're not doing, right? And so for me, that's the same methodology when I got into business because I was like, I saw it with my dad. He was kind of the same type where he was like, I don't have a degree, I don't have any qualifications, and probably I shouldn't even be called an interior architect because I never learned it. But let me go and just build this thing anyways because I think I know I can, right? And so really from there, I think I kind of built this up, and even in business, same thing. Hey, you think you're doing good because you're testing 2 ads a week? Cool. I'll test 2 ads a day, and then we'll see who does better in 6 months from now. It's just yeah, I think it just long story short, just became a personality through all these years because I seen the results off of the first time I did it, right? When I tried to become first selected in football, and then it just kind of was a trait that carried on through.
Hmm. And do you think anybody could develop that trait, or I mean, because there are
100%.
people that aren't like that though, right? For whatever reason, there's people that don't try at all. There's people that only run 2 ads a week, right? And they never ramp it up, or they give
Yeah,
up
but but
after a
but
week or a month.
It's a choice, right? The actions you take are a choice. So you have choices. I have the choice every day. I can eat healthy or I can eat unhealthy, right?
Hmm.
It's that if I obsess about my health, you know, I like for example, I'll give you a great example. My fiance, like bless her, last year we both started going to the gym, right? She had the goal to lose weight, I had the goal to like lose weight and get in better shape. We were both former pro athletes, like both kind of just fallen out of shape, like just started to like work more and not realize that that means you can't eat as much. And she obsessed about it way more than I did. And she's not like, wow, obsessed. Like she's kind of the same, but she kind of went like, I'm not obsessing about certain other things, but I'm obsessed about this. She got much better results than me because she was way more like, I'm tracking everything. I'm not skipping a single workout, right? It's a choice. I'm very obsessive about like other things. I'm not going to miss a day of like, doing work, but I'm gonna miss a day of like working out, or I'm gonna miss a day where I'm gonna have cheesecake and drink Coke like it's water, right? And I'm gonna have a
Hmm.
day where I'm not gonna post on Instagram. It's a choice. I think people when they have something that they truly care about and truly believe in, they are gonna obsess about it. I think it's just a natural correlation. They have the ability to build that connotation, right? I think you might
Hmm.
resonate with this in the sales side, but if I'm truly desperate about meeting my quota or meeting my KPI, I'm going to find a way to hit 200 cold dials every single day for 30 days straight, if that's what it takes. Right? I'll find a way if I really care about it. Because it's literally a matter of like, am I going to do the action that it takes, right? Am I going to go and show up and do the work? I think that's the one thing I loved about America because that's what I saw when I came. But now it's turned to this, in my eyes at least, it's turned into this thing where like people just don't do anything and then they bitch about the fact that they're not getting the results they would get if they actually did the work. Or they do it for 10 days and they're like, yeah, I haven't gotten the reward yet, like screw this. And then they just complain and fold, and then society tells them, oh, it's actually okay, don't worry, it's okay to fold, it's okay to be weak, it's just so
Hmm.
difficult, go take some pills. And I think that's really it's really a choice at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, no, I resonate with that a lot. I'm trying to remember the tweet, but I think the other day I saw a tweet from Alex Hermosi that business or entrepreneurship is a game of will and not intellect. I don't know if that resonates with you at all. It's really more quantity and effort based. I think people that want to get started get stuck and say, "Well, I don't know how to do it," and it's like, okay, well, you just need to ramp up the volume. You just need to do. You don't need to think about it a lot. I don't know if that resonates with you at all.
100%. Like I think I tweeted this the other day. I was like, I think I'm more stupid than most people, right? I think I have less talent. I have a lot of stuff that's way less than the average person. But I'm just gonna do the work, right? I'm just do the repetitions. I'm gonna stay super consistent. You can beat most people just by being consistent and showing up every day. Like that's really the secret sort of that people can't comprehend in a sense. So that's kind of my main takeaway there.
Yeah. And I think it's that people they see, where you've gotten basically, right? And they say, hey, I want the money, I want all the followers. And they just envision that in their mind, but they don't see that it takes years of just posting every day. And then you realize that and you're like, okay, I mean, what else do I have to do? Right. It's not that big a deal. Just keep posting.
I want to be really real with that stuff. So that's something that I find really interesting because I've fallen for this in the past where I see these guys that are like, oh, I've went from 0 to 100K in like 60 days. Yes, you did, but you also left out the part where you've created content for 3 years. Like,
Mm.
I went from 0 to 100K per month in like 30 days. Yes, after you had failed two businesses and have been an entrepreneur for 3 years. Like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
it's that lack of context where like, I just wish the whole entire online space would come to the conclusion where it's like, hey, we're actually damaging people by feeding them this bullshit narrative of like, you can get rich quick, right? Whereas I would much rather say like, hey, you can make 3 to 5K per month within 90 days, right? That's really reasonable if you do this, this, and this every day, right? Cool. All right, if you need the specifics, here you go, right? Instead of this, yeah, make 10K per month guaranteed in 60 days or you don't pay. Like, who's gonna really resonate with that, or who's gonna actually believe that this is true or this is possible? I think that's one thing that a lot of people sort of forget.
Well, and you talk about personal brand, right? And I think for those people, it may work in the short term, right? That's a very good hook, and you can get people to buy your course or whatever you're selling. But in terms of sustainability and long term, I don't think it makes a lot of sense, right?
No, it doesn't. But the issue is that there's such an influx of people that want to learn about it that it is sustainable. Like I've seen
Mm,
it time and time again because the claims you can always frame it. Oh yeah, it's because people are dumb. They're not taking action, right? It's all that stuff that people talk about. So it's just one of those things when, you know, can't really can't really do anything about it.
Yeah, no, really interesting. Let's pivot a little bit because you're all about personal brands, building personal brands, right? And so I just want to kind of get this straight. Do you believe that anybody can build a personal brand, regardless of background, wherever they are, or they work at a fast food restaurant and they say, hey, I want.
100%. I don't care whether you're working at McDonald's or whether you have a big corporate job, whether you're a business owner, right? Whether you have an e-com brand, like you name it, you need to have a personal brand. I personally believe that the times of like the CV are over, right? Your personal brand's your digital CV. For us, if we're hiring someone, right, we're looking at what are they posting online. If somebody's like retweeting Joe Biden quotes and is like giving me like, yeah, we should have 17 different pronouns or whatever, I'm probably not going to hire that person respectfully because I don't think they're going to be a culture fit, right? I don't care about the qualification. Like potatoes, potatoes to me. It's the same thing, right? But also if you want to build your career, right? Say you want to start a business or like whatever you want, like it's so valuable. For us, when we hire sales reps for clients or when our clients hire people, the fact that they have an audience that can go to and say, hey, I'm looking for this. I'm looking for the needle in a haystack. Does anyone fit that criteria? And within 10 minutes, they have 100 people applying and they find one gem. That's like a 1 out of 10 where recruiting companies charge 10, 20 grand for those placements, right? I think that's the power of a personal brand. Equally as much as like, I can have zero business acumen, zero nothing. But if I just put out content and I say like, hey, my name's X and I'm doing this, right? Like my name's Gary V and I'm flipping items, right? Then you just show how you're flipping items. It actually makes your degree redundant because people see you in action. And so then they don't care whether you've gone to Cal Berkeley or whether you've gone to like Fresno State, right? It's all the same, but they see you in action, they see your skills. Because at the end of the day, like, sure, having better degrees at times gives you better classes, whatever. But ultimately, when it comes to that, you know, it helps you actually sell. Because if they see you in action, that's what they build. Your degree is not going to do the work for you, right? Same in business. If there's so many people that are like, I do Airbnb or like, you know, I have sales training, you're not going to go and you're not going to know who to buy because they're all going to sound the same. But if you have their social presence and you have a solid brand where you show yourself selling, right? You show your Airbnb breakdowns, you show the competencies that you have, and you show even what you're about personally, right? What you believe in, right? There's a lot of people that may consider themselves more right wing that would resonate a lot more with Tate than someone that spreads the same that spreads the same course knowledge or whatever, but is on the left wing. And so it's like having the mixture of like what you do and who you are is really where the perfect personal brands lie, because now you attract people with your personality or your knowledge and you connect with them on the other, so that when they show up on a sales call or like they show up on like an interview, they're like, yeah, like I know you from doing this, this, and this, and this, and this is why I want to work for you. Like this is why I know it makes sense, and I trust you that you can get me the result I want. And so, yeah, like long story short, like 100%. I think if you're not having a personal brand in 2024, I think you're missing out big time.
Yeah, so basically you kind of view it as an overall life enhancer and you can kind of decide to do with it what you want, right? If it helps you, you know, sell more info products or it helps you land a better job, either way it's a win-win. Why aren't you doing it? Kind of.
100%. Because ultimately, like, you know, even from like a perspective of like, let's say really something really basic, like, let's say dating, right? If you have like a really neat social profile, like, you know, you're going on a date with someone, and they're like, oh, this person likes dogs, this person does this, like they're in shape, right? It already tells a lot about you, and you can actually set the frame properly. Where like you don't just go on and it's like, okay, what does the Tinder bio say, right? It's kind of like you can see that accumulation of years, what they're about in this journey that they've gone through, which says so much about you. You know, you can curate also like who reaches out to you. Like if the type of content I post, right, is supposed to attract a very specific person. I don't want to attract like people that have like 1K in their bank account and like are trying to like become a millionaire because they've seen me driving a Lambo, right? I want to attract the business owner that sees myself and is like, I want to scale up my business and your stuff is really valuable. Therefore, I want to work with you. So that's kind of how I kind of look at it.
So can you help me understand that, right? You're working with business owners, right? And so the business has a brand, but are you also helping the business owner develop their personal brand? Is that the niche?
Yes. So basically, the way we kind of do stuff is super simple. So as a business, yes, you're selling products or service, right? But corporate brands are very like dead in terms of like people just know it's like a PR stunt. Like you cannot really feel like whether a business ad, a corporate brand, whether it's authentic or not. But what you can tell is if you see someone's story, right? So we basically put personal brands above the corporate brands, because a personal brand, you can go and see, oh, this is where they come from. This is the journey that they've gone through. This is where they're at now, right? Like you can see and you feel like you have that authentic relationship with them. And so we scale the business not by building their corporate brands, but building their personal brands. Because people, when you look at psychology, they buy from people they know, like, and trust. And it's very hard to trust a corporate brand because you don't know what they want. However, on the flip side, when you have a human that you see literally documenting their life, you get that trust barrier out of the way, right? And it starts to feel like you're, again, buying from a person. So, for example, when you buy from Grant Cardone, right, you don't buy real estate because you might not even be interested. You buy from him because you want to be like Grant Cardone, and he's telling you that like this thing is how he made his money. And so it's really like people buy the transformation that they otherwise can't get, right? And it's a bit of a cheat code because now it's not necessarily like you need to find a way to make the program real or the product real sexy. It's a matter of like, how can you make yourself relatable, attractive, and like sexy in itself, where people are like, I want to buy what this guy's doing. That's really sort of the mindset that we operate with. So yeah, we build every client's personal brand, and then through that, help them scale their companies.
And so how does that work from an Instagram or a social media profile perspective? And maybe you could give me advice. So if I'm trying to grow this podcast, right, is it better? I'm assuming it's better to grow it under my personal name.
Yeah.
Even if the show is called something else, but it's my face on Instagram posting it like, hey, this is the.
So if I was you, I would do two things. So number one, I would just cut up obviously all these clips, right? And I would just post all clips under the podcast name. But then the clips where you're talking, the stuff you're articulating yourself, you want to cut those up and post them on your personal profile. And then in the bio, you can have a founder of blah blah podcast, right? And then that's really where you can actually like start to build out both. Because when people go and follow the podcast page, they see who it is run by, so they follow you, right? When they see that you posted and you have a podcast, they might follow the podcast. But really, you're going to be the main attraction vehicle because they don't really care about the podcast as much. They care about what you say and what you have to say. The podcast is just going to be like a direct like result out of it. If they consistently listen to your stuff and they're like, damn, that's pretty cool, they might check out the long form piece and then they're like, oh, damn, like that long form piece was really good too, and then become a fan of the podcast because they're a fan of you. So that's how I kind of view the whole thing.
No, I think it's a good point. I'm curious though, because there is always some hesitation, right? Like if you're the face of the brand, you're kind of roping yourself in. You're like, okay, well, this is what I do. It makes it harder to exit. What if you say, hey, I'm done. I want to move to Switzerland or Bali and just hang out on the beach, but I'm the face of this, and so I have to continually be present, right? Is that a pushback you get at all from clients that you work with?
Not really, to be honest. To be honest with you, a lot of like, let's think about it. Info products are hard to sell out anyways, right? They're hard. But like when you think about it even further, there's certain brands like, for example, Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor sold his whiskey company for like multiple $1 million, like multiple hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's the face of the brand. Like he is the brand. People buy the whiskey because of Conor McGregor, right? They didn't obviously stay if they like the product. And so you got on, like, I think that a lot of people think that like, oh yeah, if my face is tied to it, or if it's built on my name, I'm never going to be able to sell. I think it's a misconception. I think it's, especially to bootstrap, get your first million a year, 10 million a year, go and build it with your face on it because it's the easiest path, right? Later on, you can then build an actual company structure around it and like actually make it a bit more like sellable. But ultimately, like, so I recently was speaking to someone who, is very high up there with the Fortune 500 companies. And he's told me that a lot of companies, like big ones, think of like Microsoft, like those type of companies, they're investing thousands, if not millions this year or the coming years to have the founder or like the CEO become a massive personal brand because they've seen what the Elons of the world do, right? Like Tesla,
Mm-hmm.
Twitter, they're closely tied to Elon, but it doesn't inflect their like evaluation because it's still a good product, right? So I think that's really something that people have to go to understand. If it's a really good product that's not like that other people create and distribute, then it doesn't matter whether you're the face of it. Elon's case it really helped, right? Like, Steve Jobs is not a really polarizing figure. Like, I think a lot of people bought into Apple, right? Great example would be in the consulting space is Sam Ovens. People bought into Consulting Accelerator, but really bought into like Sam as an entrepreneur, Tesla, whatever Elon launches, people buy into Elon as the entrepreneur and being able to create good products more than they buy the product in of itself. If they need a new car, they're like, Elon is the best guy. I'm gonna buy Elon's car, right? It's just obviously on a different playing field. So I think that's kind of I would say pushback on. I don't think the sellability of businesses is so big on like info products. Most businesses say that because their sellability is reduced because they have a shitty product, right? That's how I kind of view it.
I guess too, what I was getting at though is you are, as the founder, you're kind of always beholden to it, right? Or you say, hey, I'm done. I don't want to post on Instagram anymore. I'm tired of just being present, right? And that kind of puts you in a bind. I don't know if you ever think about that or your 100%. Clients ever think about that.
But the biggest thing is you want to create systems. So when you want to build your personal brand, right, you don't want to rely on like, I wake up and I create content and then post it. You want to rely on, I wake up and I have systems in place that consistently push out content, right? So for example, as we're speaking on this podcast, I have a separate camera set up that's filming the entire thing. I'm gonna clip videos out of that, right? Which is like, it gives me clips on demand. When I'm speaking at an event, I have someone filming it, I have clips on demand, right? When our clients are doing coaching calls where they coach, people are clipping it, right? So then they have, on the back end, they have editors and like a team that chops stuff up and makes that a scalable process. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think about it all the time too. Like if I was actually to scale this and all I had to do was show up and do 3-hour-long interviews a week, and then somebody else was cutting it up, building the thumbnails, posting all of it. It's like, I think I could do that for, the foreseeable future. So you just have to make it sustainable, right? Where it's like, hey, this is, I have all the free time I'd want and I get to do this and I enjoy doing it. Yeah. So I think it's a good point. I know we need to kind of bring this to a conclusion. So any final thoughts on personal branding, or maybe you can give recommendations to anybody out there that's thinking about going into this? What's the first step, or what's the best advice looking back on your journey and all the people that you've worked with?
So if I had to start a personal brand from scratch this year and I wanted to grow it, so I'd really go through 3 steps. First, I would just sort of have a brand map where I know, who am I speaking to? What am I talking about, right? Having clarity of what you're talking about, the topics you want to cover is so important. So you don't just create like random videos, right? Number 2, I'll be just consistency, right? Your first video is going to suck. Your second video is going to suck too. Your 20th, 30th video is going to suck. I'm on video number 64 and I still suck on camera because I haven't been consistent, right? But it's just accepting that you're probably not going to be perfect, but you can commit to like 90 or 100 days of posting, where you post for 100 days every single day. Right? And then number 3 would be is right now being authentic. It's essentially not trying to recreate what other people are doing, but to really find your own things. What the topic you like to talk about? What are the things you've accomplished, right? What are the adversities you've overcome? Finding all these assets and creating videos around those topics, and just in a super raw and concise topic. And the last point would be is number 4, don't overcomplicate it. We all got a phone, right, that we can go and use. It's as simple as finding a topic and being like, turning the phone on and starting to talk about it, right? Then you just learn over time. You make the mix in minimizations where you learn how to create the hook. You learn how to like maximize retention, right? You learn all these things, but you won't learn any of it, and you won't grow a brand unless you actually start to create content every single day.
Yeah, it goes back to kind of being a bit obsessive and repetition, right? So I like it.
100%.
Hey, I appreciate it, taking the time. It's super interesting. I learned a lot. Where can people find you? Why don't you close us out with all that information, and I'll be sure to link everything, all your socials in the description.
Beautiful. Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Jeremy Nick Moser, or you can find me on Instagram at Jeremy Nick M. But yeah, appreciate you having me on. It was great chatting to you. And yeah, looking forward to hopefully seeing some of the folks over on Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jeremy.
Sweet. I appreciate it.